Well, thank you, Dan and RATPAC team. Thank you so much for having me. To just do a brief introduction, hi, my name is Rosy Schechter, and I am the Executive Director of Amateur Radio Digital Communications. I think the last time that I was on here was a number of years ago, when people didn't actually really know what ARDC was, and I think that more people know who we are now. So I won't necessarily go too much into what we do. But just to sort of give a brief overview, ARDC is a private foundation and we're going to talk a bit more about this later, but we're a private foundation. We got our start in the early 80s when Class A block of IPv4 addresses was allocated to amateur radio. Over time, a nonprofit was formed, ARDC, designed to really make sure that those addresses were always used for charitable purposes, for the intersection of ham radio and the internet. And in 2019, the board of directors decided to sell about a quarter of the address space. It wasn't very well used for the purpose of creating an endowment. And so now we are a very unique organization that both makes grants to support all kinds of projects, and then we also manage the remainder of the address space. So that's a little bit about what we do, and we'll talk a little bit about what we've been up to. Give me a second. All right. So there we go. Howdy, howdy. All right, so today, I've already done a little bit of an introduction, and we're going to spend a little bit of time doing a recap of some of our activities from 2024. For those of you who might have been at our community meeting a few weeks ago, or who have seen the video from our community meeting, some of this might be a little bit of a repeat in terms of the recap. We're also going to talk about something I'm pretty excited about sharing, which is that ARDC has a new vision statement that our board of directors has been working on for quite some time, along with sort of some strategic work that is going to help us to increase our focus on target projects that we think will, bring a lot of awesome things to the world. And then we'll end with a bit of a Q&A. So what have we been up to? So if you want all the details about what we've been up to, every year we do this thing where we put together an annual report. And the annual report, which I should actually just have a URL to here, I'll share that in the chat once I stop yapping. It includes basically everything about our grants, everything that we have funded in the past year. In 2024, we had an initiative called the Grants Evaluation Team, which we shortened to be the GET. And what the grants evaluation team did is they went through all of the reports and all of the information that our grantees had sent us in. They did an analysis about all of the grant work that we had done, showing which grants they thought were more successful or least successful. We have a report about that. So yes, there is a report about the report in the report. We'll also talk a little bit about some of the things we've been doing with our technology and what's up with 44net, as well as a little bit about our operations, staff and board, arrivals and departures, et cetera. So if you want a bunch of details about everything that we've been up to, it is all in this report. Today in this presentation, we're actually going to go through some of that relatively quickly so that we can talk a bit more about the vision and strategy stuff. So just some updates. We have a new board member, Farhan, who has joined us in the past year. I realized actually, though, that over the past few years, since the last time I was on the RATPAC, we have had quite a few shifts in our board of directors. People who have stepped down are, since I think it was 2021 that I was on here, Bob McGuire stepped down, Casey Claffey, who was one of our founding board members. She did retire from our board. We miss them both very much. And we have gained Bob Whitty, KONR. We have gained Ria, I think N2RJ, right? And Bob Whitty, who I just said, right? And then we also got Farhan. So our board of directors has been really wonderful, and we have some new members. We've also gotten some new staff members since last year. So Skylar Earl has joined us as our Director of Technology. If you're not familiar with him, he is both a really amazing combination of somebody who has a lot of experience in ham radio as well as with open source and networking and that kind of thing. So he's kind of a oddly perfect fit for this position. We're very glad to have him. Adam Lewis, who has been he's been a volunteer with us for a number of years. He was on our technical advisory committee, and then he contracted for us. We did finally just decide to hire him because he was great to do our IT and development management. So we also brought on John Burwell, who is taking on a role that we've never really had at ARDC before. Um, just as our grants are treated as its own charitable program, so 44Net is also now really truly treated like a program. And we have somebody who's actively managing it, managing all of the volunteers, managing the portal, which is how people get allocated IP address space when they request it, all that kind of stuff. So John has joined the team, very glad to have him, as well as a young man named Adam Zimmel, who is helping us with a lot of our administration. He also is really into collecting vintage electronics and surprises me every day with just how much wisdom he has as such a young person, comparatively speaking. So this is our crew for the most part, adding in Rebecca, who is our communications manager. So a few years ago, it was just me, and I think it might have just been like me and Meredith and Chelsea. Meredith is our operations manager, Chelsea is our grants director, and now we actually have like a full team. And I think that this will probably, oh, and of course, Dan Romanchik was here, and as well as John Hayes. We miss them both. So yeah, we've got a nice little crew these days. And I think we're at about max capacity for the size of our staff. So anyway, that's the team. So if you want to know anything about who we are, all the changes that we've made in terms of our staff, our volunteers, I advise you go to ardc.net /about/who we are, and there you can see all the people. Yeah, and every year we also put up a blog post about like our new volunteers and that kind of thing. So you can look to our blog as well. All right, so just a brief update about technology and 44Net. So back in 2024, some things that we were up to, we refreshed our portal, portal.amper.org. This was a piece of technology that had not been updated in about 10 years. And so we finally got this update done. It was definitely a bit imperfect, and we learned a lot from the process. But ultimately, it was a lot of work by Chris Smith, as well as Tim Posar and a number of other people on our tech team. One important thing that it did do, though, is it's helping us to correct something that we hadn't really done in the past, which was do identity verification for people who are using our addresses, making sure that they were actually active hams, that kind of thing. And it also has given us an opportunity to sort of assess, like, okay, which addresses have been assigned but are not actually being used, et cetera. So we've been going through a number of changes and assessments since that launch, and we'll be continuing to do that work over the next year. So our staff and our volunteers have worked on doing a few things. For folks who are interested in the 44Net stuff, we have had a gateway at UC San Diego for a very long time. UC San Diego let us know, though, that they're like, hey, we need to do some security upgrades. And so we need for you to, update your server and everything. So in doing so, we had to go through a lot of steps to sort of refresh it. And that is underway currently and should be, I think it should be operational soon if it's not already. We're also putting together a point of presence project that our volunteers have been working on for the past year. We're hoping to release that this year. This will make it a lot easier for people who are maybe newer to computer networking to connect to 44Net. And then to support that as well, we're doing a lot of work with new documentation and resources. So later on this year, keep a lookout for new learning materials and that kind of thing. So yeah, and last but not least, our technical advisory committee is always working on updating our policies and procedures for improving the workflow around 44Net. Many, many, many thanks to them. They have come in with a ton of enthusiasm in 2025, and I'm excited to see what they all do. So that's it for technology for now. We'll talk a little bit about grants. I know people often have a lot of questions about our grants. Again, we're going to talk about this high level, but we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. So 2024, how many grants do we give? We gave about 59 of them. If you break them up, it's really cool. Our grants director, Chelsea, always breaks us up by, helps us look at the grants by dollar spend versus by the number of grants that we actually made. And I love looking at this view. So here you can see that about 20% of our giving went to different scholarship programs, including one at the ARRL. About 1.6 million went to research and development projects. So definitely, not necessarily the majority of our budget, but certainly the largest grant category. About 16% or about 600,000 went towards education, and about 800,000 or so went to amateur radio projects like repeaters and clubs and that sort of thing. All told, we approved about $3.8 million in grants last year, and we probably impacted about 15,000 people. So final numbers for our dollars approved will be, as always, in our 990 PFs, which we publish every year on our website. So if there are people out there, myself included, who like to go through organizations 990, see what you learn. We put ours on our website so that they're easy to find. So that's the grants by dollars. Oh goodness, we took out this. I'm sorry. Oh, I thought I heard something. I think we did take out the number of the slide about the grants by the number of grants per category, unfortunately. But it's really interesting. One of the main things that's worth noting is that even though the numbers for research and development are much bigger, we actually give to far fewer projects that do research and development and to far more projects that do amateur radio and education projects. It just happens that these types of projects end up having smaller dollar amounts typically associated with them than some that are related to research and development. So sorry that slide's not there, but I can share it maybe after the meeting if folks are interested. And it's all in the annual report, so you can look and find all the details there. Like I mentioned, last year, we also did some work with our grants evaluation team. This was a pilot project where, again, we brought together volunteers. We looked at all of our grant reports that had come in, which were about 99. There are almost 100 reports, but then there was some issue with that report. Anyway, 99 reports. And we looked at them using a variety of factors. And ultimately, the main purpose of doing this evaluation was for us to both figure out, how are our projects doing? If we funded something, was it a good use of funds? Do the grantees find that they had a successful experience, a not so successful experience? Like, how did they do? The second reason why we did it was also to take a look at our own evaluation process to see like what's working, what's not working, right? And we learned a ton of stuff. One of the things that we learned is that, based on our criteria of success, which was, was somebody able to complete the project? Was it clear what they did? Was that project in alignment with ARDC's goals? And overall, did we think it was a good use of funds? We found that using that sort of very simple rubric, like 71% of the projects funded, we found to be successful, which was great. 22% of the projects were unclear. And by unclear, we just mean that the reporting that we got back was not necessarily didn't necessarily give us the information that we needed to be able to make a determination, or it also maybe wasn't so clear that the project aligned with ARDC's goals in the ways that we wanted it to. And only 6% we put as less successful, in that like it wasn't clear that they did the work, and it wasn't clear that it was also aligned with ARDC's goals. So given that this is sort of our first, we're still fairly young as a grant making organization, I would say that a 70% success rate is pretty great, especially given that and this wasn't just like staff assessment or board assessment. These were volunteers who were looking at this as objectively as possible. So I was pretty happy to see those results. We also identified some ways that we can improve our own reporting, which I was happy to see. One is that we have been doing kind of a one-size-fits-all questionnaire for our grantees, the intent being that we want to make it easy. We want to be consistent. But, the questions that you ask of an education project that, was very simple is different from the type of evaluation and the type of questions that you would want to ask of, say, a larger research and development project. So we've learned that we're shifting up those questions a little bit depending on the type of project. We've also learned that, we need to, and we knew this already, but the process of going through all of these reports made it really clear that in order for us to be good resources for our grantees, it is helpful for them to get feedback in a timely fashion, and based on the reports that they've given us. And that also means that we have to review them in a timely fashion. Up until very recently, we've only had one staff member working in our grants department. We've since hired somebody to support her. And we've also learned that having volunteer support to go through a lot of these reports has been really helpful. And the volunteers who work on it get a lot out of it. So going forward, we will also be doing far more timely review of reports. And our goal is to make sure that any report that we get in gets fully reviewed within 3 months, ideally less than that, but we're trying to be realistic given our capacity, so that we can get feedback and ask our questions again in a more timely fashion. Another thing that we learned, and we learned this from our grantees, was that strong outreach leads to exceptional results. And what we mean by that is that for the projects that were interested in education or interested in bringing more people into amateur radio, the more effort that they put into reaching out to their community, the more successful their project was. So that was really cool to see. And I think a really interesting learning from going through all of those final findings. So yeah, if you want, go to our website if you would like to get a full review of the report. I think it's really interesting stuff. The other thing is that what you won't find in the report are like detailed findings from every single grant that we've reviewed. But we did get feedback that people want that. So we will, over the course of the next year, be updating all of our grant descriptions on our website with some more results. So in line with our goal of transparency and also helping one another to learn from one another. Oops. So yeah, we have, I can't believe it's already, we're already in the sort of like third round of grant rounds for the year. So the next time that we have an application deadline is July 1st. If you are looking to apply for a grant sometime soon, note that we're actually in the process of updating our grant making criteria and instructions. We will have that information up ideally by Monday the 15th. So, if you're thinking about applying, maybe pause for a minute and wait for those new questions to go up. But yeah, those are coming soon. So July 1st is when we'll be reviewing those grants anyway. So there's plenty of time. And then we'll have another round of review on September 1st. And then anything that comes in after that, we'll review next year. So as always, if you are looking for information, go to ardc.net/apply. This is where the new criteria and instructions will be. And then you can actually submit your application at grants.ardc.net. So yeah, I think that's all that we have in terms of recapping from last year. And so now I'm going to talk a little bit about some really exciting work that we've been doing on our vision and strategy. Also, I should say that this is my first time presenting this specific material. Our board president, B. Garby, has typically been the one doing it, so I'm going to do my best to do it justice. So to give a little bit of context about ARDC and why we went about doing this work on vision and strategy. So our origins are at the crossroads of traditional amateur radio and the emergence of the internet. Like we talked about before, a long time ago, back in the 80s, we were, a block of IP addresses was allocated to amateur radio, for the purpose really of experimentation, experimentation with packets, radio, etc. So that's kind of how we got here. So forever we've had one foot in amateur radio, which in this presentation we kind of referred to as AR, and then another sort of foot in the internet and the greater world of digital communications. And when we put together our organization, when we put together our nonprofit, we came up with this vision or this mission statement to support, promote, and enhance digital communication and broader communication science and technology, to promote amateur radio, scientific research, experimentation, education, development, open access, and innovation in information and communication technology. Excuse me. So part of the why, so our mission is great in many ways, and it's by on purpose, it's very broad. And part of the reason why it's broad is sort of strategic in its own sense. If you make an mission that's too narrow, then you really restrict what you're able to fund. That's a whole other conversation on what you have to, if you change your mission statement, you have to potentially change your funding. Anyway, it's a whole thing. So we decided to create a fairly broad mission in order to make it possible for us to give to a wide variety of projects. So that's great in some ways. And this is so broad that it can be really difficult to ascertain, like, okay, well, within this broad mission, like, what are the things that are the most important? What's the world that we're trying to build? What is it that we're trying to do? And also, like, why, right? Like, we think amateur radio is cool. We think communication science and technology is cool. That's great. But like, what's our why? What's our vision? And how do we see ourselves getting there? And so, this led us to actually really work on a vision and strategy and to really answer some philosophical and practical questions for ourselves, in addition to, the why. What do we mean by digital communications? Digital communications represents this wide swath of thing. When we say digital communications, do I mean my phone? Do I mean my digital calendar? What is it that we mean by that? And within that context of digital communications, what is it that actually fits within our scope as a philanthropic organization? Also, why is open source technology and access so important to us? Like, and what does it have to do with amateur radio? This is a question that, might seem obvious to some people, but for other people, it's not quite so obvious. And it's a question that we would get all the time. And so we felt like it was really important for us to be able to answer it. And, big picture, again, for ourselves and for our community, what exactly is it that ARDC is trying to do and for what purpose? So after a lot of work, actually over a year ago, we came up with this vision statement, and then spent the rest of the year kind of thinking about like what that meant in terms of strategy. So ARDC, our vision for the future, is a thriving global community of learners, experimenters, and contributors advancing freedom with open source communication and information technology. So this is sort of where we landed, and now I'd like to sort of walk through each piece of this bit by bit. So when we say a thriving global community, we really mean that we want to enable all people everywhere to collaborate in a way that crosses borders and fosters international goodwill. Fostering international goodwill might sound familiar. It's one of the key purposes of amateur radio. And it's sort of like the vibe of service that we want to inhabit at ARDC. We want for people to be working together in a way that crosses borders. And we want for people to be developing science and technology together. Those are things that are really important to us. And on a related note, learners, experimenters, and contributors. What we mean here is that we believe as an organization that everybody has the right to learn, experiment, and to contribute collaboratively and peacefully, building the technologies and communities that we want to see in the world. Like, we have a right to be able to work together on this stuff, right? So advancing freedom. Here, what we mean is really the freedom to tinker and build with like little or no gatekeeping, right? So, we want to be able to, get it, break open inside of our technology, take it apart, reprogram it, all of that kind of stuff, and not necessarily be like breaking any laws or breaking any, patent agreements or anything while we're doing it. We believe in the freedom to be able to communicate and share information, again, in service of assisting others. And as part of that, we really believe in the power of free software to enable learning, experimenting, and doing by all people everywhere in a way that proprietary products and software generally just don't allow. My part of my background, and this is something that I feel very passionate about. Part of my background in learning technology relates to learning how to create maps for the web. And I learned very quickly that if you wanted to use a product like Google Maps, that there were a lot of limitations to what you could actually do. Like you can like plot some points on a map, fine, whatever, maybe change your color. But if you actually wanted to make something beautiful and make it your own, then you probably needed to program it yourself. And well, if you want to program it yourself, you need open data. You need to be able to use like, common frameworks like JavaScript. Anyway, learning about for it, I've never been a great coder, so I only went so far in that, but I wouldn't have been able to learn what I was able to learn without open information, without open data, without OpenStreetMap, for example. So it's something that's very, very, very important to me. So, and then, with open source communication and information technology, what we mean here is that by eliminating this gatekeeper technology, by using free software, we enable makers, hackers, and developers to learn, experiment, and deploy using freely available knowledge, tools, and platforms, right? And within that, as an organization, we also tend to want to focus on areas of amateur radio and digital communications that are less likely to be funded than commercial applications. And open source technology typically falls into that category, right? So, there's always been this long history of overlap between people who are hackers and experimenters and people who are involved in amateur radio. Open source technology really is the glue between those two things. Like if you don't have the ability to work with open source frameworks, then it limits your capability to really experiment with amateur radio and digital communications. So that is our vision statement. So how is it that we get there, right? We've come up with these sort of 3 high-level strategies that relate to our vision, right? We talked about learners, experimenters, and contributors. So what is it that we want? We want to promote learning, we want to promote experimenting, and we want to promote doing, right? And all of these 3 things go together, right? And all of these 3 things have the goal of getting more people learning, experimenting, and doing with amateur radio and digital communications, right? If you are able to learn something, right, then you can actually get to doing stuff. If you are experimenting, then you might be able to build something new that either people can learn with or that people can do new stuff with, right? And ultimately, the doing part is really important, right? Like if you go and get your ham radio license and then you never use it, like, was that really a totally useful exercise? I mean, I'm not going to say no, but like, the cool thing is actually getting people involved in using these radios, utilizing spectrum space, et cetera, right? The same thing is true with experimenting and with research and development. If you work on some cool project, but you're the only person who ever works on it, and you're the only person who ever actually uses it, then what impact does that have, right? We want to focus on projects that are thinking about the users and there are thinking about the community contributors as part of it, because again, like we want to bring people in and we want for people to actually use the technologies that are being built. So let's talk about each of these just a little bit. So again, promoting learning, getting more people learning about amateur radio and digital communication. When we talk about learning, one of the things that's really important to know is that we're really talking about any age. I'm not just talking about K through 12. I'm not just talking about universities. I'm talking about like people my age, maybe not inside of a classroom, getting together and figuring out how to, how to solder, or how to use these different sort of capacities. Side note, really interestingly, I am in my mid 40s, and a lot of people in my community who are around my age, and particularly a lot of women, have recently gotten really interested in learning about radio, learning about mesh networks. And so this for me is kind of an exciting opportunity to say, hey, okay, One, what can I make sure that I can brush up on and know well enough so that I can then share with my community, right? That sharing of information with my community is its own form of learning. It's happening outside of the classroom, but it doesn't make it any less impactful. And in some ways, it's more impactful. So, when we talk about promoting learning, we're looking at, all different types of learning environments and learning activities, and especially lifelong learning, right? Even with folks who might be like, even older than me, right? Like, are there opportunities, for example, to, if you've come from like the analog radio world and you want to learn about digital, like what's the learning pathway to get you to understand a bit more about those technologies? So yeah, objective one, promote learning. Objective two, promoting experimenting. Excuse me. So again, getting the goal of getting more people exploring, innovating, and advancing technology. So this can be somebody who's maybe new, exploring a new handband or some non-amateur wireless technology for new innovations. It is worth noting that as part of our sort of digital communication focus, obviously we are forever, invested in working on things related to amateur radio. But I think that another thing that we recognized was that there is a lot of opportunity for learning and experimentation in the unlicensed bands as well. And so, like looking forward, we are definitely looking for projects that are looking to utilize unlicensed bands. So just as a heads up about that. So yeah, experimenting can also, working on an electronic kit building, and it can encompass a wide range of technical depth from tinkering and like really, basic learning and experimenting to far more deep dives. And then, of course, last but not least, promoting doing. We want to have people using new tech productively within amateur radio and digital communications. So, again, the technology that we're looking to fund, we want to be used in the real world in order for it to have impact, right? So again, technology being developed, thinking about the users in mind, thinking about ways to get more people involved with using these technologies in their local community. So, within the amateur radio context, again, we're really looking about how can we bring more of this to the masses? How can we also get feedback from people who are using these technologies that might then feed into this idea of like, okay, well, how can we improve it to make things easier to use? Side note, every once in a while when I'm using my handheld, I get a little kerfluffled because it's like, wait, which setting is behind what button? I feel like there's some opportunities for improved user interfaces, for example, for radios that might make them easier to use, and then more people might end up using them. I see some nods. Thank you. I feel seen. Right. We also want to promote using because with the spectrum space, we all know it. Use it, or if we got to use it, or we're going to lose it. We'll see what happens with our new FCC over the next however many years. Yeah, I know that there's a lot of commercial interest in some of the amateur radio bands. So yeah, we have to use it. We have to make a case for it or we're going to lose it. So, and then again, with digital communications, similar to the amateur radio spectrum, we do want to see folks using unlicensed or lightly licensed spectrum for like basically the same reasons, right? There's some really interesting things that we can do with mesh networks and similar using these unlicensed bands. So like, let's get to it. So again, coming back to this question that we have a philosophical question we've been asking forever. We're probably never going to get to an exact right answer about what we mean at ARDC when we talk about digital communications and what falls within our focus. We do know that there is definitely some overlap with amateur radio, and then there's some parts of it that are not necessarily part of amateur radio. But even within that, this other sort of part, the vast majority of digital communication, again, particularly like proprietary stuff or web applications that really have nothing to do with information technology or amateur radio don't really fall into our remit. So while we're still, working on we'll continually be working on a more perfect definition of what we mean by this forever and ever. But in the meantime, I would say that, what we mean by our DC focus is that, we are enabling makers, hackers, and developers to learn, experiment, and deploy. No gatekeeper technologies. There are a lot of really cool projects, and some of which I like a whole lot, that unfortunately use like proprietary protocols or proprietary technology. Those are not going to be the things that we typically are going to fund. We want to make sure that the projects have sort of a broad impact. They're open, they're shareable, they're leverageable. They're not just serving a single group, but they're really designed to be used by multiple people and multiple different types of communities. Again, not likely to be funded by other sources, and also not just wireless. We went back and forth about that quite a bit. And yeah, does not have to be wireless communications. So, the road ahead, like I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we are going to be, oh, can you guys hear me okay? My default microphone just changed.
Nope, you're okay.
I'm having a little tech issue. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Great. Perfect. Awesome. Don't know what just happened there, but that's fine. So anyway, look, the road ahead, like I mentioned, we're going to be updating our website with some new materials that reflect some of the ideas that I've shared with you. Our vision and some of our strategy work is already on there. The main things we're going to be updating are our granting criteria. It's not going to be too different, but subtle enough changes to where it'll be important to pay attention to those changes when you actually submit your grant application. So as part of that, we have been working on also defining some topic areas of the greatest interest. I'm happy to share that we actually have that together as well. And so we will soon be sharing that out with, I'm taking off my headphones because they're deciding to be challenging. Okay, so we'll be sharing those topics of greatest interest very soon. And then, of course, this is a relatively new strategy for us, and a relatively new set of criteria, things that we're looking for. Over time, we're going to learn, people are going to ask us questions, we're going to have questions of our own. And so we do expect to be refining, clarifying, and sort of extending this over time. So I think that is it. Oh, all right. If you have questions and you happen to be out in the world, either at Hamvention or Ham Radio Friedrichshafen, come and find us. We are all going to be there at Hamvention this year. Staff members, board members, a ton of our volunteers. So come talk to us. We are very open to, talking to y'all about anything. I think we're also doing a presentation on that Friday, May 16th, along with some of our grantees. We'll be sharing about some of their work. And then again, we'll be at Ham Radio Friedrichshafen in June. And with that, thank you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm open to whatever questions that y'all might have.
I love that you all.
Thanks.
Someone posted the report in the chat. I hope it's the right report.
Say again, Barry.
Someone posted her annual report.
Oh, yes, she did.
Oh, no.
Right report.
I can't hear y'all again. This is...
You don't hear
I
us?
apologize for my technical difficulties. One moment,
Okay.
please.
Maybe you need your headphones.
Put your headphones on. Yeah, put your headphones.
Headphones.
Send her a chat. Now you're
Headphones were part of the, sorry, I can hear you now. The headphones were cutting in and out, and I think that was actually part of the issue, which is why I took them off, but I can hear you now. Very
Okay.
I've literally never had that happen until tonight. Sorry, gang.
It happens.
Before we go much farther here, I'd like to apologize. Earlier on, I alluded to our meeting with 250 people, or more than 250 people, which sort of implied to you, oh, gee, I'm not as good as them type of thing. The 250 person deal was a recap on North Carolina's Hurricane Helena and lessons learned in that. And that's why we had the big audience for that. And it was a government type of thing, FEMA and all that involved in there. So I didn't want to lessen what you're doing because you're doing great stuff and we love hearing from you.
Oh, that's totally fine. No, I'm not worried about it. I also realized that we've really had our hands full and could have done a better job of promoting it. Like I mentioned before, I'm fine, but I had surgery last week, and so that will throw things off a little bit too. But no, I'm thrilled to be here, and frankly, I'm also thrilled that you had that kind of turnout for a subject like that. It's really important stuff.
Fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating what you're doing. It energized me. I'm one of the founding members of the Boston Computer Society, and back then we had an incredible vibe about digital communications, and it seems like it's being revived again. It makes me feel good.
Yeah, man, that makes me really happy to hear. I think it is. I've had when it comes to things like communications and open source and, more recent years, ham radio, among my more arty community, I have been known as like that friend, you know what I mean? And recently it has been so gratifying that people are now really interested in learning about all of these things. So I really do think that we are going to get a lot more interest in these kinds of subjects in the coming years, which is, pretty cool.
Amateur radio hobby is such a broad thing. It has so much to offer, so much to give, and I really appreciate what your organization is doing to promote it, to get the people out there and all different angles of it. It's important to us that carry on, and that takes funding. So thank you.
I have
Did you
found
comment, Dan, about the other day? It said 250 participants the other week when there was a supposed beer keg door prize. That's why we had so many people come in.
Well, unfortunately, we didn't have the beer, but it was a pretty good presentation. But what we really look at is what happens afterwards. How many hits we get on YouTube and our other social media areas. I guarantee you, Rosy, we'll get a lot of hits on yours. What you're saying goes out to a lot of people, and thank you very much.
Oh man, it's absolutely my pleasure. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you.
And if anybody has, when I sent out the invitation, everybody, I put a link there to Rosy's QRZ page. It's worth reading. There's a lot of good information she's put in there. I really invite you guys to go check her out.
Thanks, y'all. And I wish, I wish that our one of our either our tech director or our 44net program manager could have been here. They have a lot to share about what they're doing. But yeah, if you want to reach out to us, reach out anytime. Contact at ardc.net. We are here to share resources. And again, I'm really proud of the team that we have right now. So we're here to answer questions, any question that you might have.
Rosy, I might extend the invitation right now. You guys are doing a lot of things. I don't want to wait a year, 2 years to know what's going on. I don't think so anytime you want to give us updates, get out the word or whatever, let us know. We'll get you on there. We really want to promote what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. I would love that. And yeah, I think we're going to have some more demos and things coming out later in the year. So yeah, we'll definitely keep in touch. I'll make sure that our comms manager, Rebecca, helps me stay on top of it.
Okay. Fred, into KDX, you got your hand up, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. And Rosy, a very interesting presentation. Would a 44net basic question be appropriate? Is that something you'd like to talk about?
It has to be very basic. This is another reason why I wish my tech manager was here. But yeah,
no, that's okay, because I'm coming at this from a really basic level of understanding. What kinds of people are granted 44net address space, and what are the typical uses? I'm just getting interested in digital communication over ham radio. I recognize Finn on this call because he's a frequent contributor to the WinLink programs group conversations that I monitor. And those things have been very useful to me as a new WinLink sysop. And I'm looking at some potential other digital things that we can use in our county races team. So 44net has come to my awareness, but that's as far as I know.
Yeah, gotcha. So, great question. I mean, and at a very high level, if you have an amateur radio license, and we can verify your identity, then you're able to come to us and request IP addresses. And I mean, it's a relatively low at this point barrier to entry. A slightly higher barrier to entry if you want to do something like, BGP announcements, or, announcing to the greater internet. We do a little bit more of an ID check just to make sure that we know who you are. But, I would say that people typically use, so allowed uses of 44net, they cannot be commercial. So, we're not going to give out free IP addresses for you to run your business. They do need to be related to amateur radio in some way. And so some people use them as, IP addresses for, repeaters or that kind of thing. In Germany, we actually have, there's a group called Hamnet. I don't know how many folks are familiar with Hamnet. I mean, they are probably the most prevalent users of 44net address space. And they've basically created like a whole like intranet between one another using our address space. So if you're interested, I'd be very happy to put you in touch with Jan, who is the main person running it. And he can tell you like all about how they're doing it, how to get people involved, how they are like bringing people in and getting them involved. I really love what they're doing and would love to see more of that kind of thing here in the US.
Yeah, thanks. That was really helpful. I think it'd be a little too soon for me to pursue this with anybody in your organization, but that does give me a better idea of where those addresses are actually employed. Thanks.
Yeah, not a problem. And yeah, again, John Burwell, our 44net program manager, is one of my favorite things about him is that he is A, so knowledgeable, and B, so kind. So when you're ready, come to us with whatever questions, and John will be happy to sort you out.
In the beginning, we linked packet radio bulletin boards nationwide on 44net.
Yep, I know. And I think that like one of the things I'm really the most excited about right now is our point of presence project. I think right now the barrier to entry for actually learning how to use the address space and in any kind of like practical way is pretty high. And most folks these days like don't necessarily have the patience to like tinker around with it. So I think once we have this project going, which we should have going this year, and we can get more people more easily using it, we might end up seeing something similar like that again in the future, because we just have that sort of a little bit more of a critical mass of people using the address space.
Okay, any more questions out there, folks?
And there's a hand up.
Interesting that you came with a mention of Hamnet from Germany. I have been informed many years ago from Austria about the German Hamnet, and also I think into Germany as well. And there was some Swedish sysops, WinLink sysops some years ago, mentioned that they was thinking about using Hamnet in Sweden. I don't know what they succeeded with. In Norway, the country is too big, geography is too complicated, and the density of people so few. So we will have problem with ham linking on the microwaves. So that's why I'm in ordinary WinLink, HF and VHF,
Yeah.
UHF. I think, but there are regions in Norway around 67 degrees north where the Aurora is the worst, where they are thinking about how to skip HF totally using VHF, UHF, and other microwaves to try avoiding being so vulnerable for the sun. And some of them mentioned relatively new a short time ago, they were thinking about Aerodon. I think they mentioned that. So, but I don't know too much about it. So that's why I came to them tonight to learn a bit about it. Thank you for the presentation.
Absolutely. And I do, this is also one of those places where I wish I was more technically inclined and could give like just some good advice off the top of my head. But I mean, one of the things that I'm always just so impressed about with the 44net network, the people who are involved are so passionate and so smart and have been doing this for so long that someone in our community has ideas that might be able to help you out. So yeah, again, definitely get in touch. And I'm so glad that you're here. It's nice to meet you. I've always wanted to go to Norway also, or Sweden. So
Thanks.
yeah, absolutely.
Well, Lil D Dan, WL7COO, go ahead. Dan, go ahead and take it away.
ARDC is such a breath of fresh air, with its altruism and its interest in furthering the art and science, as opposed to other organizations that we all put up with. And I noticed, I think it's on page 28, where it says we attended the following events in 2024. Oh, that was actually February of 2024. Is there any takeaway from the NPIA symposium, NPI Spectrum Policy Symposium, that is listed here? And, or do you even know who it was that was there? And, you know, I'm curious that was a presence you wanted to make. Makes perfect sense to me. And I'm just really wondering what the outcome or takeaway is.
If I am remembering correctly, I think that the NTIA symposium was something that one of our board members, Phil Karn, spoke at. He might have been invited as a speaker. So I cannot remember off the top of my head what the exact outcome was, but I am happy to do a little digging and to follow up. I will admit that last year was a little bit traumatic for ARDC. We lost one of our colleagues, John Hayes, in April of last year, which then cascaded a whole domino effect of pretty gnarly stuff. So you were like, in February 2024, and I'm like, oh, that was only a year ago, but it feels like it was 1 million years ago. So anyway, I can find that information for you and follow up if you give me your email.
The Earth was a different place in February of 24.
It was. That is.
So anyhow, I'm going to read the rest of it.
Okay,
and,
cool.
Just see what I can find. Have you had any engagement with Arden?
We've had a little bit of engagement with Arden, you know, and if I remember correctly, there were some conversations about, you know, 44net address space might be a really good fit for y'all. But ultimately, they have their own that they've been using for a long time. And I know that shifting things over is kind of a pain in the butt. But, you know, doors always open. We have so many addresses. And I think that they're great. I've got a little note at my house.
Okay,
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thanks.
Okay, we're getting to the top of the hour. Rosy says she can't stay much longer than that. So let's get the questions out there, folks.
We're all good in chat, so.
Well, Rosy, it's been a pleasure. I really appreciate you coming on here. We hope to see you guys more often.
I would love that.
Great things, and we want to know about it. We want to get the word out.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm really grateful to all of you for inviting us. I'm glad it finally happened. And I think that you all are a breath of fresh air. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
By the way, that was the best photograph of Rhea I've ever seen in your report. Really?
Oh, in the report? Cool.
Yeah.
It's a good one. All right.
I'll have to tell Rhea about that.
I will pass the compliment along.
All right.
All right.
Any more last comments or questions or anything?
Thank you all for coming.
Yes, thank you for coming. Thank you, Rosie. Really appreciate you taking the time out to do this.
Come back
Absolutely.
soon. Keep
I
coming
look
back.
forward to it. All right, will do.
Okay,
We
73.
need the energy.
Oh man. Well, you know, the feedback is mutual. All right. Thanks, y'all. I'm gonna hop off.